This podcast is brought to you by NVIDIA and the new GeForce GTX 580 GPU. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the PC Perspective Podcast, episode 135. I'm going to call this our holiday edition, recording it December 22nd, 2010. I'm Ryan Shrout.
And I'm Josh Walrath.
And that's it, ladies and gentlemen.
It's the ghetto edition.
It is. It is. If you're watching this on a video, either live recording or after the fact, cameras are all messed up. Skype went down today for us, just especially for us. And we're using Google Talk, and we're trying to get it set up in the span of about 10 minutes, so that's always fun and exciting. But I think we have a workable solution here. Thanks go out to the guys at the Twit Cottage for helping us get it figured out quickly enough. Ken is not here. He's never here, I guess. Jeremy is out ice fishing. Alan is driving somewhere, apparently visiting somebody. I don't know how this holiday stuff really works. Luckily, Josh and I have nothing else to do. This close to Christmas.
We don't have lives.
I guess we could word it like that. I would have preferred to not, but we do what we can. So we're going to talk a little bit about computer hardware. We don't have a whole lot of reviews to get into. The only real reviews that came out on the site were not written by either of us this week. We've got a couple of news items to go through, and then I didn't have any emails or voicemails to get through again because of the complex system we're using. We'll kind of, Josh and I, as we tend to do, we'll just BS our way through the show, talk about 2010 year in review, predictions for 2011, why we're upset at the other people for not showing up for the show, things like that. So let's just go ahead and jump into it.
They are losers.
Exactly. I couldn't have said it better myself. The first thing we're going to talk about very, very, very briefly is Alan's review of the Samsung 470 series 256 gig SSD. This is a completely new controller from Samsung. In the past, we have not been real bullish on Samsung controllers on SSDs. All kinds of various reasons. This iteration is a little bit different. The performance is actually pretty good in most of our tests. I think the only thing Alan found there where performance was a little bit questionable, if nothing else, was these kind of mixed read-write scenarios that he describes pretty well in the article. Obviously, go to PCPer.com to read the full write-up there. It'd be much better than either of us will be able to explain it. They did say it had great sequential read and write performance. The IOPS and NCQ scaling, those types of things were excellent. It looks good if you're into the way your SSDs look. It has a pretty... I guess the previous generation Samsung SSDs had a brushed finish as well. This adds like a little orange corner to it, kind of shows the capacity. Nice looking if you're into that type of thing. No screws, though, so you have to have a little prying device if you want to open it up. Interestingly,
if you think about it, as I interrupt you, the first generation of SSDs that came out, we had J-Micron, which were crap at the time. I mean, all that stuttering, all that nastiness, and then Samsung.
They were good at the time because we didn't know any better.
Yeah, and then Samsung came out with a controller that just did everything pretty well. I mean, certainly it didn't scale very well in IOPS, but everything else was fantastic, and they really leaned on that for a very, very long time. In fact, the SSD I'm using in my main machine was donated by Alan and a little bit of horse trading, and it's one of the Samsung based SSDs as well from OCZ, and it's a fantastic piece of technology. But this was before IndyLinks came out, before SandForce came out, and especially before Intel came out with their i20 E25, 25E, X25M.
X25M, there you go.
That would be it. I knew that there was some combination of numbers and letters. But anyway, yeah, I had read that, and I had talked to Alan a little bit about that review, and certainly it is a step up from the previous generation, but I think that a lot of people were thinking it was going to be a lot more impressive than it is. Now that the technology is a little different. I mean, they've got slightly different, next generation flash chips on there. They've got their next generation controller, and then they've got these dual, is it DDR2 or DDR3 cache chips on there. It's something like 256 megs of cache, which is, it's pretty hefty for an SSD. I mean, certainly if we're looking at, a high-end Caviar Black spinning disk is 64 megs of cache. So, I mean, they're taking this up to a whole new, huge level in terms of just the really fast reads and writes from this cache.
Right. Another interesting point to it is when you take it apart, it's a standard 2.5-inch drive form factor. When you open it up, it's actually a 1.8-inch form factor internals. So the PCB is designed for the smaller form factor 1.8-inch drives. Obviously, this just makes it easier on their end to make one PCB, sell it to multiple markets, to multiple segments, that type of stuff. I just think it's funny looking when you look at the pictures of the PCB. It looks very crowded, looks very it almost looks disorganized on the PCB, like some chips are facing one way, some are 90 degrees, some are 180 degrees. Flash chips are mixed in with DRAM and the controller and all that kind of stuff. But obviously that doesn't really matter to us. We care about the performance. Price is also pretty competitive for this part. Let's see if we can go over that. I think the retail prices, kind of the stated MSRPs, were right in line with other parts, but the actual prices he found them for sale were pretty good. I think you could get the 256 gig model for $489 as of the time he published it, which is $1.91 per gigabyte. I think that was at buy.com if anybody's interested in checking that out or looking for it. So that's actually pretty good. Lower than a lot of other SSDs normal price, and as low as or lower than other SSDs when they're kind of having those kind of winter holiday sales types of things. So if you are in the shopping mood for an SSD, 64 gig, 130, 128 gig, 260, 256 gig, $489. And I think, as everybody on this podcast will attest to, and by everybody I mean Josh and I, that an SSD upgrade is one of those things that you really got to try it to see the difference. I bought a new Lenovo X201 recently, not new, it was a refurb, but it came with the standard 300 gig hard drive on it, and like the very first thing I noticed was, man, applications open a lot slower than I'm used to. The hibernation time takes a lot longer than I thought, and so it's like literally I had it on for maybe 2 hours total, kind of installing different applications before I said, "Yep, screw it." Took an SSD that I had that was on another test bench, mirrored it over, and put the SSD back in the new laptop. It's one of those things. I don't know if I'll be able to go without SSDs from now on. I have a little bit of a luxury, both of us do, because we deal with a lot of hardware stuff. But like they say,
what the price
once you go SSD, you never go back.
Yeah, 90 gig and 120 gig drives. I mean, they had that Intel 120 gig drive just a couple of weeks ago that was on special for like $159, and certainly that's a chunk of change. But I would have to say that most of us could afford such a thing. I mean, sure, it's a little bit of a luxury. Sure. It's still only 120 gigs, but it's something you're going to keep around for quite a few years and use as a boot drive and all of your, Office apps or photo editing apps and stuff like that doesn't require a whole lot of space as compared to, like, your Steam folder, which has 170 gigs worth of games on the damn thing you never play. So. Indeed. So check out that review if you're interested in SSDs. It's always good. You get a comparison to the Intel drives, the other popular models that are out there, Vertex drives, those types of things. Another review that we have posted to PC Perspective that the author is not here to join us is a notebook review, the Acer Aspire 5551G-4591. And another easily to remember product name, courtesy of the makers of Gigabyte. Yeah.
So the Acer Aspire 5551G is like the model, and then 4591 defines what specs it has. So you probably won't actually see that listed many places. This notebook was kind of unique. It has an AMD Turion 2 P520 processor. It's a dual-core 2.3 gigahertz processor, and it has Mobility Radeon HD 5650 graphics in it, which is not really high-end, but it's pretty good for a mobile platform.
Yeah.
Yeah, 15.6-inch screen, 1366 by 768 resolution there, 6-cell battery, blah, 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 the normal types of things. It does have HDMI, VGA output, those types of deals. It's a pretty interesting model. Matt Smith, who's doing a lot of our notebook reviews recently, took a look at this, and his kind of conclusion to it is that it turns out to be a pretty good gaming machine when you look at the performance numbers compared to a lot of other laptops we've looked at. For example, Far Cry 2, DirectX 9 version, native resolution, medium detail levels. He compared it to the Asus U33JC, which actually uses an NVIDIA, what does it use? An NVIDIA 320M or something like that, or 330M. I can't remember which one it is.
Yeah, still pretty low end.
Still pretty low end. So the average frame rate he got on the Asus machine was 12.3 frames per second. On this one, he got over 50. And on the Just Cause 2 benchmark, the U33JC got about 12 frames a second, and then this Acer system got over 28 frames per second. So those are pretty significant differences. The U33JC uses the NVIDIA 310M, by the way, since I found that information. Also, boot and resume time, much better on the Aspire than it was on the U33JC. The only thing he kind of complains about with this is that it's kind of in an unassuming package. It looks like your standard traditional OEM business 15-inch notebook. He says his final line of the review is if Acer slapped some neon lights on this laptop and called it something cool, like the Acer Apollo or Armageddon, gamers would buy it in droves. As it stands, however, the Acer Aspire 5551G 4591 is an affordable gaming laptop burdened with a generic multimedia laptop exterior. So it's pretty good. It shows some of the potential for these AMD platforms, even the current ones before we get to the Fusion products, that they can still be good machines.
Yeah, and certainly, I mean, what was the the price on this? I mean, it was sub 700, right?
Let's see. It was. I don't see that in here. He says it's about $799, I think, and it's and compared to the Alienware M15X that costs like $1,200. That's pretty good.
Yeah, and when we have so many laptops that are under $800 that have integrated graphics from either AMD or Intel, or they have a basic NVIDIA card in there, it's nice to see that they're still doing some, pretty affordable standalone graphics cards. And the 5650, while, certainly not a barn burner, is a step up from integrated, as you can see from the performance. And this is something that, say you get a new job and you get sent out to the boondocks and they give you $1,000 to buy a laptop. Well, I mean, you're in your downtime, you're not going to go anywhere. You might as well do a little bit of gaming if you got the chance. And so this is a nice, affordable way to be able to have a decent experience when you're out in the field or away from home and you got that itch. Unless, of course, you're a World of Warcraft addict and then you don't have any internet connection, you pull out your hair. And
actually, I lied. You're right. The price on Amazon for this machine was slightly different specs. Let me make sure here. Turion P520. What graphics card? That's kind of the important part here. It is not listed in the quick specs. But you can get it for $589. So that's really cheap when you look at it that way. So
yeah, and it's hard to say where exactly we're at because we're about ready to hit a new laptop. I guess. Oh gosh, what the
cycle refresh.
Exactly, a new refresh. I mean, the AMD Brazos is coming out. The Sandy Bridge notebooks are going to be coming out. I'm not exactly sure that time frame, but they're probably going to start to get rid of a lot of the excess older models, and we should probably see some prices go down. And certainly the processor this is based off is the Athlon 2 dual core. I think it's the Rigor is the code name, and I just butchered the pronunciation of that. Thank you very much. But it's a good, solid dual core processor. It doesn't pull a lot of power. And what kind of power was he seeing from this in just usual applications? I mean, it's a 6-cell battery. You're not expecting miracles. It certainly isn't a Brazos, which is 19 watts TDP. But how was it doing?
It looks like let's see, if we look at the battery life, he got 2 hours and 48 minutes on it. So not great. No magic here. Reasonably sized 6-cell battery. And he's using a battery eater benchmark, which is tougher on machines than I think a lot of the real-world tests are.
But still,
compared pretty well.
Yeah, not bad for something that has a higher speed dual-core processor. It's got 1 meg of L2 cache per core, and plus it's a standalone essential notebook video card. So when you consider that, that's not real terrible, man. Especially if you're going to use it as a work machine or whatever. I mean, you're going to be plugged in, obviously, but still 2 and almost 3 hours worth of time on battery with something that's really beaten on it.
Yep.
Kind of like Ken. He likes to beat on things.
Wink. So check that review out. Yeah, check that review out, obviously, on the site if you're interested in those types of notebooks. We're going to take a quick break here to thank today's podcast sponsor. All right, we thank MSI for that. Now let's jump into, we got a few news bits here, nothing real dramatic before we get into our ramblings on the 2010 and ramblings into the future of 2011. Turns out Intel Sandy Bridge Core i7, i5 CPUs and motherboards have already started going on sale if you live in Malaysia. The motherboards are actually on sale in several places in the U.S. as well, apparently I've been told. But the processors, that problem is unique to foreign locations, apparently. This was spotted on a Malaysian website called loyat.net. They went into their local computer store and basically said, hey, here's a bunch of LGA 1155 processors we found for sale. It's troublesome for me as a reviewer, but, since now everybody else can just go buy their stuff and test it. But that's good for consumers. You get your hands on the products right now. They had Asus motherboards out there for sale. I'm also told Gigabyte and MSI boards were readily available.
Isn't VR Zone kind of in Malaysia?
I'm not sure. Probably.
I think they are. So, yeah, they're probably going to have, the NDA-breaking review of products that we bought off the street corner, which they actually probably did.
Right, and if they do, you know what? I can't say anything. That's Intel's problem at this point.
Yeah, and yours.
If you are interested in widescreen gaming, you probably know of a website called the Widescreen Gaming. Is it just widescreengaming.com? Widescreengamingforums.com. Okay, all right. This is a site where it was actually initially created when we went from the world of 4x3 displays to 16x9 or 16x10 displays. And you wouldn't believe the headaches that caused, unless, of course, you were alive then and played games and actually know what we're talking about. It was maybe not as dramatic a change as what people are trying to do with Eyefinity and NVIDIA surround solutions, where we attach 3 monitors, either in 3 monitors in their landscape mode, right? Yeah. Or, 3, or in this case, we had a video of a 5-screen Eyefinity portrait mode, similar aspect ratio to a 16x9 display. And so they actually show a demo running Heaven, running some game demonstrations, running some pretty cool stuff. And the reason we linked you here is that they're actually having a contest at that forum where if you have a multi-monitor configuration, make a video to show it off, and you can win some prizes there. I'm trying to think what it was. It was some good graphics cards. A copy of Deus Ex Collection.
Ooh.
Borderlands with a DLC pack. How about 15 turbine points for the Lord of the Rings Online?
God, that's like 3 hours of work on Lotro.
See, and you know that, and I don't.
Take it all.
Yeah, but it's still a pretty cool video. If you're one of those guys or gals that wants to drool over multi-monitor displays but doesn't have one, it's a well put together video and demonstration of that.
That's me.
What's our next news bit here, Josh?
We just never seem to talk enough about AMD and Brazos and their platforms that are coming out. I guess we've seen quite a few leaks lately of actual products that should be shipping. Guys like even Jetway are getting into it. Now, Jetway is a lot larger in Asia, and I think that they do a lot more industrial-type stuff than, say, like Asus or Gigabyte or whatever. And so I know that I saw a picture of their Brazos platform, and it did look very industrial. That it was designed for higher temperature use, a little bit more rugged, not nearly as exciting or sexy as we would hope it to be, but still certainly these are things that cause AMD to drool.
Yes,
because it makes them money. And
right. So the kind of announcement, that they made was that Asus Gigabyte, MSI, and Sapphire we're promising support for AMD Fusion platforms. In this case, the Brazos, Ontario, Zacate, whatever you want to get into. So this means either that they're making like mini ITX, micro ATX motherboards, they're making white box notebook platforms. They're doing both. I had hands-on time with an MSI small form factor notebook computer using the Brazos platform. We have a picture in one post of from XBit Labs of a Gigabyte. What's the name of it? The E350N USB 3 mini ITX motherboard that implements a 9 or 18 watt Ontario or Zacate core processor, 2 DIMM slots. It's got a full-size PCI Express 16 slot. Looks like it's got 4 SATA ports.
I think it's all SATA really 6 too. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So I mean, in this, this is a platform where you can build a full PC out of it if you're not doing anything real major. This will also be really great for home theater PCs, any kind of small form factor. Little machine that you need to do maybe one particular task, but do it pretty well. It'll do some gaming, very light gaming. If you go back into our CPU section on the website and look at our Brazos performance preview article, or you can go to these news posts and it's linked into that, you'll see that performance is good, definitely better than anything that Intel Atom has, and it's comparable in a lot of ways to the Intel CULV platform with an Ion chip as well. So it's really good, really low power. It's not super high performance, as you're saying, but that's not really what it's meant for. But the idea of getting an actual 12-hour battery life of functional use out of a notebook is pretty compelling.
Yeah, I mean, at the high end, you got the 19-watt TDP, just the chip. I mean, certainly the Southbridge that's going to be in there, or any other, PHY chips or, physical layer type stuff. It's going to add more power to it. I mean, right. If you're streaming some audio and it's going to be jamming on the speakers, but still, when you look at the overall performance and features of that thermal package, it's pretty impressive. I know I've talked to quite a few manufacturers so far, and the one thing that really just kind of resonates is they're all really excited about these products because they can fit into so many niches. They're going to be pretty inexpensive. They're going to be a good amount of performance considering the amount of money that you will pay for each chip or each motherboard or whatever they put together. And these things are they're expecting to ship a lot of them. And and that's good for AMD. I know that I sit up here and often kind of trumpet AMD. It's not that I'm a huge fanboy because I just like technology in general. Right. And Intel has some absolutely fantastic parts. I mean, obviously their i7 stuff is the best CPUs out there. They broke new ground with a lot of their Atoms, and they really made these netbooks a lot more affordable, longer lasting, and a better enjoyable platform than what we have seen before. But I'm a lot more familiar with the AMD stuff, and I mean, I do all the reviews for it and
sure, all that, but
it's an interesting piece of technology, and it's one that's coming, it seems like, at the right time. A lot of, I think there was a DigiTimes article that came out that a lot of motherboard manufacturers were expecting a pretty significant market share shift towards AMD because their price performance in these areas and in these growing marketplaces. I mean, there's going to be tablets, handheld, mobile internet devices, netbooks, and even just regular notebooks with the higher powered Brazos platforms. That it's something that I think AMD is kind of betting the company on. Well, maybe not exactly that, but it certainly is something that they're really going to push, and they see a niche in an area that Intel may not have fully explored. Mm-hmm. because while Atom is an interesting architecture, it's still based on basically the Pentium 55C core, which is the Pentium MMX. It's an in-order. It's not all that exciting. The performance isn't all that great. I mean, the power is decent because, it just doesn't have all that many transistors. Now, with AMD Brazos, it's a fully redesigned core that the first thing that they're looking at is how do we get power down but performance up? This isn't just reusing tech and kind of repackaging it into a smaller nanometer part. I mean, they're going from the bottom up, and so far from everything we've seen, it's a pretty impressive platform for the type of power it sucks down. So it's going to be neat stuff. We're
looking forward to that. The last little bit of news we're going to talk about or mention here, we're going to have to discuss it very much, is in regards to 3D Mark 11, there was an interesting story over at Lost Circuits that I recommend people go check out, looking at 3D Mark 11 and the new physics test involved. If you're familiar with 3D Mark 06, even 3D Mark Vantage, they had very separate, very dedicated, here's your set of GPU tests, here's your set of CPU tests, and you get a unique score for each. And through their algorithm, you get a combined overall 3D Mark score. Now, when PhysX came out, that put the first little wrench in things, where we noticed that one of the tests used NVIDIA's PhysX technology, or at the time used Agea's PhysX technology, to accelerate part of the processing engine in 3D Mark Vantage, giving you greatly inflated scores for systems. Like if you just use default options, and you had an NVIDIA card and an AMD card in the same, a system, swapping them back and forth, the NVIDIA card would have a much, much higher CPU test result than the AMD card. And that kind of incorporated GPU computing into that. A simple checkbox, though, would disable that, and you could go about your day and do direct CPU dedicated testing and direct GPU dedicated testing. 3D Mark 11 doesn't really have anything that they even call a CPU test anymore. They have one that they call a physics test. And Lost Circuits took a look at it and kind of compared what were the differences in these results based on the GPU that you had in your system. And it turns out it varied, not as dramatically, but it definitely varied. And there are the reasoning for it, according to the FutureMark answer that they got back, was that it has a lot to do with the driver overhead involved with the AMD side and the NVIDIA side, and comparing how their drivers work and that type of thing. But even going from like a GTX 460 to GTX 480, the score actually went down in the PhysX score. So it seems to be a lot more variable than we'd like. Hopefully they're going to make this a little bit more static, a little tighter in terms of results to make it more useful for us. I know you spent just real quick time with 3D Mark 11. Did you have any, what did you think about the physics test, or anything about this interest you at all?
The physics tests were interesting in that they were actually, solid body interactions, gravity, crap like that. And so that was interesting. The scalability on there is pretty impressive. But it certainly seems like right now AMD does kind of have a lead in it, because they're using the bullet physics, the open source type stuff, instead of the, Agea / NVIDIA PhysX, which obviously is not open source for multiple graphics cards. And I think we're going to see some interesting changes throughout the next year as NVIDIA, tries to kind of catch up and works with bullet physics and because while to most enthusiasts, seeing 3D Mark scores, it's not that big of a deal. I mean, it's kind of interesting. It sets a baseline for it. But when you're talking to OEMs and people who buy thousands of computers, this is something that they just, can quickly look at, do a comparison, and say, yeah, this one's better. And I mean, it's an order of thousands and thousands of units. And this is something that NVIDIA probably wants to really take a look at.
I think without a doubt.
Yeah.
All right. Now, since it's just me and Josh and Alan and Jeremy are out on vacations, leaving us to do all of the work, of course.
Shouldering the burden yet again.
I figured we'd take a quick second here to look back at the year that was, or that is almost was, Does that make sense? It's not quite 2011, but we're really close now. I know because I have way too much stuff to do before January 3rd, which is when we all leave for CES. Not taking that into consideration, what about computer hardware? What maybe single device, single product in 2010 was the best? I know that's kind of like a generic term. We could pick best CPU, best GPU, best motherboard, best laptop, but just what products stood out the most? To me, I'm going to say the 5800 series of graphics cards, that's a 2009 product. It came out at the end part of 2009. It's kind of come into its full family form here in 2010, but I'm going to count that, push that away. I'm going to go with the GTX 460 as one of the best, best products that was released in the year.
I hate you.
Did I steal your idea? I'm so sorry. You got to think of something else.
Oh, God. Bless it. Go ahead.
So the GTX 460 was like a market changer, right? AMD had this dominant spot in terms of graphics performance and in terms of performance per watt, performance per dollar. Now that and NVIDIA had good parts. They even had faster parts, but they didn't have a position to make with that. The 460 came in and was a better process, was a better product, changed the way the price per or performance per dollar at the time looked completely, and I think started the waterfall effect of price cut after price cut after price cut that we have seen since that card's release. They put the 460 in a market that didn't really exist, the $200 to $250 price market that AMD didn't really address very well, and AMD's kind of shortcut answer was to cut prices on a lot of other things, and then NVIDIA cut prices again, and AMD cut prices again, and in the end, it turns out really great for the consumer. We got good stuff. Probably second, I would have considered the Asus Aries graphics $1,300 graphics card, but
because that so many people were able to buy that directly from you. You were a large percentage. Yeah, you could have been a large percentage of their total sales.
I've never been anywhere and somebody say, "I'll buy that off you. I have cash. I'll go to the ATM right now." When we were at QuakeCon, that was kind of funny. But
it was.
So, okay, I obviously stole your idea. You can elaborate on it a little bit if you want, but what else you got for us?
Okay, well, the GTX 460 was a game changer. I mean, it offered amazing performance for a great price, and it was a wonderful mid-range DirectX 11 card that just was able to do everything well. It was feature-packed. It was, again, as you mentioned, it was something that AMD just had not countered. I mean, they had the 5770 at the $179 point, and then they had the 5850, which was $299, and sometimes well above that. They had that kind of strange 5830 that nobody really liked and didn't sell really well, and it just was kind of a dog. But the GTX 460 came out, and it was fantastic. I mean, it was exactly what the market needed. It provided a lot of impetus for DirectX 11 gaming. It was just the right product at the right time, and NVIDIA just nailed it. So, I guess my other pick would be two of them. On the Intel side, I think the i7 750 and 760, or is that an i5? I can't remember. It's i5, right?
i5.
i5. A really tremendous, more budget aimed chip that can be used in productivity and gaming. It's Nehalem based. It's a true quad core. Yeah, you gained a couple of percentage of performance if you went up to the i7 800 series, but otherwise for $179 I think now, and when it was introduced it was around $199 to $209. It was a really, really good product, and certainly, if you're going to build any kind of well-rounded gaming machine, that would be the first processor you'd look at, because it's a lot more affordable. It was still plenty fast, and it essentially whooped anything that AMD had. Now on the AMD side, their X6 processors are really, really good as well. AMD, it's a bigger die, it's more expensive to produce. but you get a true 6-core product for under $300. And as compared to Intel's true 6-core products, which are $800 and above, this was a heck of a deal. A lot of people who are doing a lot of multi-threaded work, multitasking, things that really will utilize all those cores, they found a great workstation product at desktop prices with the AMD X6 chips. So I think we were discussing that a couple weeks ago, that we just saw AMD kicked out of the workstation market, and the Opterons were just not well represented there. But then we kind of take a look at the situation and think, wow, they can get essentially a workstation product for 1/3 of the price with just their desktop parts. And I mean, most people who do heavy stuff, they can use 6 cores, but I mean, will like 12 cores really improve their experience or their workflow? And in most cases, no, that's not the case. So I think it's a good mix of these mid-range i5 true quad-core products and the AMD 6 cores.
The final thing I'll add in here is USB 3.0 and SATA 6G. They came out, I think, at the very, very end of 2009, but they have gained a lot of strength. Also, SandForce controllers for SSDs really pushing performance faster than anybody and really kind of putting pressure on Intel in a way that I think not anybody really had before. And both of those products kind of came to light this year. Now, this is a little more difficult question. What about the worst hardware? Do we have anything that came out and just stunk up the room? It really didn't have a target audience, or it was way too expensive. It's too easy to pick any Intel Extreme Edition processor that's ever been released. So I won't do that. I'm looking at probably the GTX 480, not because it was a really bad product, but just it was kind of universally not accepted as being really great. It had a lot of faults. People complained about it being hot. People complained about it being loud. NVIDIA said it wasn't hot and it wasn't loud. And still people complained about it being hot and it being loud. And we complained about it until the 580s came out, essentially. Right? So I wouldn't call it the worst product. I'd say it's like a not great product that I think everybody internally at NVIDIA realizes that, it wasn't the best we could have. It's not the best we could do, but it's the best we could have done at the time. And they were already 6 months late. Let's get a product out the door to have some competitive market. If you still have a 480 card, I'm not saying throw it away. You can send it to Josh, probably.
Well, I'm running a 480 in my main machine, and certainly gets a little annoying at times when it starts spooling up. But I wouldn't say it's a bad product. But it was not as, I guess, well-rounded polished as the 5800, which 5870 was whisper quiet even at full load. It could still do pretty much everything, and it was the first on the block. So
maybe the Asus Aries card as well could make both lists, because releasing a $1,400 graphics card is probably a bad idea.
In this economy? Are you serious?
Very cool, fun to write about and test, not the most practical. It happens. So
yeah.
Can you think of anything off the top of your head that might make that?
Oh yeah. 2 words. 2 words. Killer Nick.
I guess this iteration of it, yeah.
I mean, it's just so pointless. I mean, okay, if it was maybe 10 years ago when you had no local network in your house. I mean, most of us have a router there, right?
Yes.
And it used to be if you had a DSL or some of the first cable iterations that you were only able to use one computer, and it connected to the internet through that, and so you had no firewall, no effective firewall, that is, and no ability to really share the internet connection. And at that point, this would have been a great product, because it would have done all the things that you wanted to do. It would do the gaming packets like you wanted. It would have balanced out your streaming of LimeWire, of Napster, or whatever the hell else you were using, and you would have good speeds, and it would have been a good product. Now, even your basic a wireless router that you can get for $50 still has, QoS type stuff, the quality of service type applications that will, sniff your packets if you allow it to, and it'll prioritize stuff that requires lower latency as compared to, streaming video, or, you're sharing out your MP3s illegally and the RIAA is going to come after you. But just Killer Nick, it's too expensive for what you get. And it seems like they missed their window more than pretty much any other product in there. And now we've got all these other kind of, interesting things, these special going on with them. I just don't think that they're really able to sell them. One area that I thought that they kind of missed the boat on is that it was basically a Linux distro running on that card, and they could do a lot of things with that as kind of this mini computer in your computer, but it just never really took off, which is kind of unfortunate because that a lot of neat things could have been done at that level. But yeah, I think that for the money, Killer Nick it's about the most useless upgrade you can find.
Another thing I would call a disappointment is the Lucid Hydro technology. Really thought that it had the potential to be kind of a PC gaming technology to really shake things up. Maybe not be perfect, but maybe put some more pressure on NVIDIA and SLI to do something else. And while the product has been improved over the course of this year, new drivers and things have done a good job, it never really caught on. It never really caught on with media, never really caught on with gamers, never really caught on with other manufacturers releasing products. I mean, we had, one or two or three motherboards from MSI that were a little bit lower key than perhaps the first one was, and then one from from ASUS that I know you're testing. Yeah. And it's one of those things that sounds so great on paper, and it hasn't been executed yet. There's still a chance, but every year they wait, or every month they wait. The high-end PC gaming market seems to be shrinking, so they're losing out on any potential audience there. So.
Yeah, I think that they've got a whole lot more impetus going now than they did any time before. ASUS is a very large company, and they're a very wealthy company, and they may not always tell you that, but they've got cash reserves that allow them to do interesting things. MSI, I mean, they're arguably number 2, number 3 in the motherboard market. I mean, they're trying to push the Hydra technology as well, because, at least on the AMD side, NVIDIA is not willing to do any other SLI-type applications. I mean, you have to buy one of maybe 4 or 5 motherboards on the market. You've got MSI and ASUS have, one higher-end 980A base board. A couple other manufacturers have the 750A boards, and these are, 2-year-old chipsets coming out. And NVIDIA just isn't willing to do anything, and they're certainly not going to license anything to AMD because that's their primary graphics competitor. So, while they're willing to work with Intel, Intel's also selling 80% of all computers out there.
Sure.
And so that's a no-brainer on their part. But with AMD, I mean, they don't need to do anything. And so I think that where ASUS and MSI are really pushing this is that you've got this, the compatibility to do Crossfire X and SLI on one board that has the Hydra. It's not an exceptionally expensive chip. It does some other things really interestingly, and it's a technology that they feel has potential, but certainly it has not grown into that potential yet. But we've seen a lot of improvements over the past 6 months, and hopefully we can still see those type of advancements with the company, and certainly, they've got a very short lifespan of where they can really make a mark, and I think that this next year is going to be very, very important for the company. And, for the sake of technology enthusiasts and people who want SLI on the AMD platform, I hope they do well. And when you've got MSI and ASUS really kind of pushing and willing to spend the money and help you out there, I think there's a better chance of them actually succeeding. Now we just got to hope that their technology really is good as we hope it to be.
Let's get to the future now, Josh.
Oh, God.
All the way to the year 2011, which starts in...
Do you have to have a flashlight under your...
9 days.
Sing something out? No? Okay.
No. What do we think is going to happen? I'd say we'll approach this from the three major companies in the technology world. It's AMD, Intel, and NVIDIA. Intel will still do everything that they do now. They'll still have really fast processors. Sandy Bridge is probably all we'll see for most of 2011, I assume. What will they do in the mobile space? What will AMD do? I think we can make predictions about Fusion, how prolific it will be, whether or not. I personally think Llano is not going to be that great of a product anymore. I think it's way past its prime where it was going to make the most sense against the Linfield, Clarkdale, those types of products. And now that it's going up against Sandy Bridge, it probably will lose a lot of its luster. The Fusion on the low end, the Ontario Zacate, I think it will be much more successful than a lot of other people think it will be. Does that make sense?
Yes.
I think it's going to catch on more than a lot of people predict, because they're going to see the power and performance benefits of that low power consumption, high performance compared to a lot of other segments out there. Now, Intel still has a chance to make some quick rush into the Sandy Bridge CULV area, and maybe they could make a knock in there. What do you see in that kind of processor space? Is it going to be dominated by Intel in 2011 on the desktop side, or are we going to see AMD's Bulldozer product come out and give us something interesting to compare it to?
It's really hard to say. I agree with you in that.
That's why we call them predictions.
The first. Exactly. Their fusion with the Brazos platform, I think it's gonna be gangbusters. I think they're gonna find a lot of traction for it. A lot of manufacturers are really excited about it. We're gonna see some really interesting tablets. I know that Google obviously is really pushing for more in the hardware space to get kind of these basic platforms out that they can sell more of their products and whatnot on. It's just a really good, well thought out platform, very focused for what it does, and does very well. So I think, AMD is going to see a lot of success. I think it's a good cornerstone for them building on the future. I also agree with you that Llano is not going to be as hot as they were hoping. If it had come out in second half of 2010, it could have gained, again, a lot more traction. It could have made it into a lot of holiday parts, as it would perform well. It had great graphics. It was everything that the current i3 and i5s are not. But against Sandy Bridge has such a much better CPU architecture, much faster that way. They've got that built-in media encoder, and they've got graphics that, while certainly not at the Llano level, is a big step up from the previous integrated parts that we've seen from both Intel and AMD. So, I don't think Llano's going to do all that hot. It's going to get the foot in the door. It's going to sell parts to get the AM3 Plus platform out there. And, I really question whether Bulldozer is going to make much of an impact in 2011. Certainly in the high-end desktop, it might. I think performance is going to be, much more similar to Sandy Bridge than, what we have now between the Phenom 2 and the current i7s. I think that AMD is going to cut the performance, delta between the two, and we're going to see much more, competition in terms of, performance per watt, because I think that Bulldozer is going to be clocked a little bit higher than the Sandy Bridge, but it's also, it's designed to do that not so much as, Intel's Pentium 4 was, but in a little bit, smarter way that it doesn't just eat the power. We're not going to really see anything really monumental on the desktop until 2012 or late 2011, depending on how AMD really speeds up their parts. But the Bulldozer Fusion core could be the product that AMD really, really needs as soon as possible. And I'm wondering if we haven't seen, some engineering teams being rotated around and really giving that a higher priority so we can see that sooner. But the problem with AMD is that they rely on global foundries for all of their foundry work, and I mean we haven't even seen 32 nanometer SOI from global foundries. So having a bulldozer, fusion product is going to be a harder thing to do than, say Intel, who's looking forward to doing 22 nanometer in, a year and a half?
Right.
And, Global Foundries is nowhere near going to 22 nanometers. So, this is going to be AMD chasing Intel again, and hopefully they can keep up with better designs.
Now, on the GPU side, I have a little bit of knowledge about stuff that's coming out immediately in 2011, and both AMD and NVIDIA are going to have new products out, high-end products at that. So we definitely have that to look forward to in 2011. I know you wrote an article recently talking about the GPU process technology issues and whether or not we'll be able to see, I guess, where we're going to go to next, 28 nanometer technology. And if that'll hit in 2011 and what kind of effect it'll have on us, do we think 28 will be in next year, or is that a 2012 product as well?
It's hard to say. I think we're going to see some basic parts maybe hitting 28 nanometer by the end of 2011. I know TSMC is saying, hey, we're almost there. We can start shipping products here, fairly soon. And, they don't even have all their stuff that's 28 nanometer qualified in their current line. So, looking at Global Foundries in the past year, I mean, they've reassessed where they're at, and they've communicated that very, very well with the marketplace. And I mean, they're saying, it's not going to be until 2012 that we actually see any kind of 28 nanometer parts. Yes, we originally thought it would be, late 2010. We'd see products in early 2011, but it just hasn't turned out to be the case. And so, I don't think that we're going to see really much of anything from either TSMC or Global Foundries until 2012, possibly early 2012. I mean, TSMC has a pretty poor track record of keeping with their promises on that. And I mean, they used to be a lot better, and certainly, I mean, they were kind of notorious for making promises that would be a quarter or a quarter and a half longer to get these products out than they were originally expecting. But we're at the point where it's looking like it's a year away from where they really wanted to be. So, it's a big jump going. Yeah, it's a big jump going from 40 to 28. And again, like I'd mentioned in my article, they totally just ripped out the 32 nanometer process because the 28 and the 32 share so many technological innovations that it just didn't make a whole lot of sense for them to do a 32 nanometer part that may come out a quarter before what they could do if they just, focused on 28 nanometer. So,
okay.
People who are expecting huge graphics changes in 2012 may be a little disappointed.
2011.
Yeah, 2011, sorry.
Yeah. We're not going to predict 2012 yet. We're not that good. I don't think we're very good at 2011 either. But other sides, CPU, GPU market, that kind of covers that. I still don't think 3D will take off. Although we have a 3D Fiera plasma we just hooked up today with a copy of Avatar in 3D and played that, and it was actually really, really impressive. Looks really damn good. My wife came in and said, okay, well that actually looked a lot cooler than I thought it was going to. So I guess she approves of the purchase, so that's always a positive. Lots of small form factor stuff, cell phones, tablets. Everybody in the world will have a tablet. If you don't make one already, you better start planning one, Josh, because if you don't have one, if you don't have your brand on one, you're going to be a loser. So,
well, it's too late. I mean, look at me.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah.
I think next week we will do a little bit more expanded on this, maybe focus on some other areas. Let's talk to maybe Alan will be accessible again. Maybe Skype will work. and we could talk about maybe the future of SSDs and how many of them we'll be able to have in all of our machines for $20. That's always good things to talk about. So yeah, I think that's going to wrap up this awkward, poorly created, and sliced together very quickly. Yeah. Well, lower than normal. I mean, you got to be realistic.
Yeah. I mean, my head is still shiny, so we got that going.
We need your emails and your voicemails. If you want to give us a call, the number is 1-888-38-PC-PER, toll-free in the U.S. and Canada. Email address podcast@pcper.com. We got a couple of emails this week, but they were like 10-minute reads or 8-minute reads or something like that, and we keep them shorter, keep them succinct and to the point. If you've got a problem, like a little bit of background story always helps, but four paragraphs background, not necessary. That email address is podcast@pcper.com, if I didn't already say that. If you want to share this show with others on the holiday season, I can think of nothing better than sitting around the fire with your mom and dad listening to Josh
my garbage spew out of my mouth.
PCper.com/podcast is that URL. Also, if you want to watch us record this live, you can do that. live.twit.tv Wednesdays at 10 p.m. Eastern Time, 7 p.m. Pacific. We'll have one more episode between now and New Year's, more than likely. After that, we hit into CES time frame. It will be anybody's guess when or if we will record a show during that week. We're going to try to record one, but I don't know if we'll be able to do it live. All depends on Twit schedules and our schedules and that type of thing. So with that, we were going to close out this Josh and Ryan edition of the PC Perspective podcast. I'm Ryan Shrout.
I'm Josh Walrath.
That's both of us, and good night.
Good night.